This is Camp Hacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Your mission is campers. Whereabouts' mission is making their experience coordinated and connected. Whereabouts is the only camper management system that keeps parents, admin, and staff in sync in real time, so every camper's day runs with confidence, clarity, and care. Check them out today at whereaboutsapp.io. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Intentionally Intentional Leaders, a Go Camp Pro podcast. My name is Matt Wilfrid, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm thrilled to dive into another interview with a camp leader who is changing the industry, changing the game year after year. Each episode, our guest will roll a 20-sided dice to spark personal and campy reflections through three lenses: memories, insights, and beliefs. Today, I am thrilled to introduce a guest who most certainly embodies this show's philosophy. Joining us today is Andy Pritikin. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Matt. It's so great to be on this show. I've listened to a whole bunch of them, and I've really enjoyed it. So, great idea.
Well, we're glad to have you here. For those of you who don't know Andy is a powerhouse in the summer camp industry. He is known for his visionary leadership and tireless advocacy. As the owner and director of Liberty Lake Day Camp, which he founded in 2002, he's built one of the most respected and intentional youth development programs in the Northeast. His influence also extends globally as the founder and the host of the Day Camp podcast, and through his former role as the president of the American Camp Association, New York, New Jersey, and which he's had leadership roles in since the 90s, as well as since the 2000s, having roles with ACA National. Andy has been a past chair of the Tri-State Camp Conference and a dedicated champion for the industry, founding the New Jersey Camps Government Affairs Project to protect camped interests. Andy is the co-founder of Everwood Day Camp and partner of Camp Southwoods. And beyond camp, he is the founder and producer of the New Jersey Renaissance Fair. And if you think that seems like really niche, it's one of the biggest Renaissance fairs around, and it is incredible. Andy's also a former professional musician. You can look for his stuff on YouTube. You can also hear some of his music in the ads and the intros to the Day Camp podcast.
That is correct. That is right.
That's right. And he brings a unique energy and perspective and mentorship to community building. I am very grateful for the podcast world bringing Andy into my world. He's an incredible cheerleader. He's helped me avoid paying taxes and shipping fees on some soap that I needed to buy. And I know that many people appreciate how he's always makes sure that there's a seat at the table for you. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for that. And people always say, why do I do all this? And because I was you. One day, at one point, I was everybody else out there. I was some guy that was just like, yeah, this camp thing sounds cool. I'm going to give this a whirl. And I always feel like I would have never gotten to where I've gotten to without the help of others and without learning the best practices of others. I think that's the most important thing we can constantly be doing is sharpening our sword and assuming that we don't know everything because there's so much out there to learn.
Yeah, it's great, Andy. And we're so lucky to have you in all these sharing that you've done for years on the Day Camp podcast. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm excited that we're going to get to ask you some questions that may not be about camp. And I'm excited for our listeners to get to know more about you. Every time that you and I get to chat, there's another layer that peels away, and it's an even cooler Andy Pritikin that I get to meet. So, Andy, this is how the game works. You have brought a 20-sided dice, Dungeons & Dragons style, for this game. And we are going to be asking Andy to roll his dice, and whatever it comes up as, that it corresponds to a question that I'm going to ask him. Andy, you have two special powers in this game, just to remind you. You can either skip the question. If you're not feeling it, we can roll the dice again to get a new question up there, or you can do a flip, which means that you call flip, I answer the question first, and then you answer it.
All right, I got my fingers crossed. Let's do this.
Okay. Without further ado, roll away and let me know what number you get.
Number 4.
Number 4. This is in the memories category. Andy, what was a childhood fear that you laugh at now?
Oh my gosh. I was so scared of the monster under my bed. I mean, the monsters under my bed. Like, I was terrified. I have a good imagination. Of course, it's been tamped down now with the reality of adulthood. But as a child, I had a very, very active imagination. And man, when I went to bed at night, I was just freaking out about, I mean, I was like, I listened to, all those kinds of like radio things, and I watched all the Dracula and Frankenstein and Wolfman and whatever, Creatures from the Black Lagoon. I was a comic book and monster addict. And yeah, and it got to me. So I do laugh at that.
Did the monsters have a voice or a shape or anything like that in your head?
No, they were just coming to get me. They were just coming to get me. They knew I was going to sleep and they were coming to get me. And it's funny because like, it's not that crazy in that there's a lot of kids, for my sleepaway camp friends out there. There's lots of kids whose brains go into crazy places when they go to sleep like that. This is actually relatively normal stuff for creative minds. So I take solace in that now.
Yeah, fair. And at camp, we're asking kids to be creative all day. So, of course, they're going to carry that over into the night.
Yeah. And the added stress of just not being at home those first few days, too.
Yeah. Okay, that's great, Andy. That's how the game's played.
Well,
Roll again
to a
for
weird
memories,
place.
please.
All right. 17.
It'll get weirder, hopefully. 17. Where would you go when you needed to escape as a teenager?
That's a good question. I lived as a teenager in suburban North Jersey in a relatively nice situation, but my parents got divorced when I was 13. And I became the camp director of my family because my mom was crazy, still is. And I had two younger siblings. And I had to do sort of everything for them, as far as like, meals and getting them ready for school and all kind of stuff. My mom worked a night shift. So I escaped with my friends. And really my two passions to this day, besides just friends in general and family, are sports and music. And I am, the most diehard Mets Giants fans, you'll ever meet. I've swung to the Sixers a little bit down here towards Philly. So I'm always just addicted to sports, watching sports, reading sports. I really feel it's a microcosm of life in so many ways, as is a camp. and then music. My mom was a very accomplished pianist, and she got me playing piano at a very young age, which then went to violin, which then went to trombone and expanded into rock instruments and such like that. And by the time I was a teenager, I was getting recruited into all kinds of garage bands, bands playing gigs out and stuff like that. And it was just a great outlet for me. I like performing. I like being up in front of people. It was a great use of my creativity. And yeah, by the time I was 16, 17 years old, I was in a band that was on the radio, and I was, playing gigs. Sometimes that coincided with my high school basketball games, and I would have to decide on a Friday during school if we were playing against a crappy team. I would bail on my team and I would get sick. I'm doing quotes in the air for people listening. I would get sick during the school day and go to the nurse's office, and the nurse would call my basketball coach, who was a math teacher, and he'd come running in and he'd be like, "Hey, P, come on, man, we need you today. We got to guard the best player in the other team," and all this kind of stuff. I'd be like, "Coach, I don't know, man. Let me go home and rest it off. I might feel better." And the nurse would be like, "You want to call your mom?" And I'd call the lead singer of my band, who was a female. I'd be like, "Mom, could you come pick me up?" And this brown van would come around the school, and I'd hop in and we'd off, 100 miles to go play the gig somewhere. Yeah, learned how to bend the rules a bit.
Andy, is your stuff on Spotify or YouTube for people to check out, that band?
That band, I don't know if I ever put that band stuff up. Unfortunately, this was all before, this was before CDs, right? This was the time of tapes and such like that. So that band, I think I actually do need to put it up. That was called Vertical Motion. You could find it somewhere. We were, like I said, we were on the radio in New Jersey. But my other band, Absolute Drama, I did put up on YouTube Absolute Drama's Greatest Hits. So you could check that out. It's pretty good. We were ahead of our time. Yeah. We were black guys that like playing white music and white guys that like playing black music, and it made an interesting mix that record companies were befuddled by. And we were like, how do we sell this? Every one of your songs sounds different. And we were like, yeah, we're artists, man. Don't make us into some cookie cutter thing. Stupid in hindsight. But yeah, fun experience.
And you can, for those, I said it in the intro, but I believe it's an Absolute Drama song that is the intro to the Day Camp podcast right now.
Yeah, well, there's a few. I mean, I was listening to one the other day, and during the ads, a lot of the Go Camp Pro ads, there's various songs that come in from Absolute Drama.
That's right. Well, I haven't seen the royalty check yet, so or the ask for the royalty check, and I'm just going to keep going on the assumption that it's
Listen,
not coming.
no, you can keep going. I'm not going to say anything, but I do have a couple of good songs that one day I would like to sell to like a Celine Dion kind of person. I think
Okay,
there's some good
okay.
songs in there. Yeah, you never know.
Okay, well, stay tuned. Okay, Andy, that's great. Go ahead and roll again. We've got
All
a
right, here we go.
campy themed memory question for you.
Número dos.
2. Tell me about the first time you were responsible for other people's children. What did you get right and what did you miss?
Wow. It was probably when I became a school teacher. I mean, being a student teacher was interesting, certainly, because I was a music teacher. And when you're an instrumental music teacher, you get certified K to 12, which means you have to do student teaching for the youngest kids for elementary and then for high school. And I remember going to the high school first, and it was a high school that had about 110 kids in a band room at one time. And it was a sort of urban school. So it was very mixed, diverse, and all that kind of thing. And they weren't the most behaved kids in the world. And their regular teacher was brand new in September. And here I come walking in October. This dude can't even get these kids to listen. And now I went in there. So what I did to gain their favor is when he was teaching, I bopped around and sat, because I could play every instrument. So I would sit in the areas, in the saxophone section, the trumpet section, the clarinet section, and I made relationships with all these young people to get them to understand that, like, hey, I'm not just like some teacher person telling you what to do, right? I'm like an actual human, and we're going to make really good music together if they want to participate in that, and yeah, and it was really successful. And I remember when the guy who supervises the student teachers, when he came in, and the regular teacher was teaching first, and it was absolute pandemonium. And then they called me up. They said, "Okay, Mr. Pritikin, now it's your turn to come up here in front of the class." And I got up there and I tapped my little baton, and some kids started talking, and some other kids were just like, "Hey, shut up, man! Mr. P's trying to teach us." And then they totally listened, and they were totally on top of it. And I had them eating out of my hand, and it was great. So I guess, the thing that I learned was you can't just make it on charm, right? Cult of personality kind of thing can only take you so far, right? And that leading people is relationship based. You have to forge real relationships with people. People get put into leadership roles all the time where they move up a level. Okay, so we're moving you up from frontline to middle management, or we're moving you up from middle management to director level, right? And they think that because it now says director or head counselor or whatever on their shirt, or they have a collared shirt now, or they're holding a walkie-talkie, that all of a sudden this magical power of respect should just come to them, and therefore they can act like total authoritarians and just tell people what to do, and everybody should kiss their ass. And that is not how it works. But for whatever reason, it's like a human disability that we have, that it's a blind spot, that when people move up that level, so many of them, they forget the empathy that they had at that level that they were just at. And for whatever reason, now that they're supervisors, they can't empathize with the people that they're supervising. Right. And I could never take that for granted anymore. I constantly have to be mentoring and coaching these folks so that they don't screw that up. I don't understand. I told them to do it. Yeah, you yelled at them and told them to do it, and now they're just scared of you. That's not gonna make it. So right. Yeah, so that's something that I've been pretty good at. And that I try to teach others who are doing that as well.
It makes a lot of sense, because it's like the idea of like the relationship piggy bank, right? You have to keep depositing into that bank so that when you need to draw on it, then there's a balance in there, and you have no idea how that person is spending the relationship money that you've given them. So you've got to keep pouring into that. And I think that's where a brand new camp staff struggles sometimes, is that they just haven't, or people who are just like taking care of kids for the first time, they think that there are other adults who have rational like thinking processes.
I'm taller, I'm older, I have a beard, they should listen to me, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I think the phrase I always use with these folks, I say, respect is earned. It's not just because you have this title or this
Right.
walkie-talkie or this, you know, it's a collared
Right.
shirt.
Yeah.
You have to earn their respect. You have to show them that you care for them, that you love them, and all that kind of thing. You know.
Yeah. Cool. So, Andy, I want to pull back from the game before we move into
Mhm.
our insights round here. And I just wanted to give you some chance to talk about Tri-State. Tri-State's coming up, and it's been a huge part of your world. And I know that you like try to get everyone in the world to come to Tri-State, and for very good reason. So tell me a little bit about like why that connection is so deep with you and Tri-State and professional development in the camp world.
And I've been to conferences all over the country, and even ones internationally. And I'm not throwing any shade at any of those folks, but Tri-State is the best camp conference in the world for a multitude of reasons. First of all, the multitude of people. Right? It is the largest gathering of camp professionals in the world. And I know you've heard people probably say that, and you're just like, so what? No. When you're in a room with thousands of people, camp folks, that is something. There is a power to that, no doubt. And also because it's so big, and I say this as a director of a big camp, when you're big, you're able to do more things. Right? You have more money. You can get more speakers. You could have a wider range of workshops being offered. We have an exhibit hall that's the size of a football field. It's there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vendors, of every sort. There's not even enough time. It's one of those things. It's just like, yeah, I went to New Orleans for a weekend and I only was able to, it's like that. Like you got to go multiple times to even
Yeah.
appreciate it. And then, and of course, anybody that really takes advantage of conferences, it's the networking and the socializing and meeting people and all that kind of stuff. And it's like almost infinite. For the first time I went to Tri-State with my mentor at the time, Ben Applebaum, who now half the stuff at Tri-State's named after the guy. We walked into one of those big keynote kind of things, and it was like 1,000 people in there at that time. Now there could be 2,000 people, and I was like, I can't believe, like, even from my short experience, I had been a school teacher, and I was like, I'd gone to those in-service trainings and they were such crap, and I've learned more in like 3 hours than I did in like 5 years of in-service trainings. And I just can't believe how generous everybody is in sharing their best practices. And Ben said, this is a unique industry because, if a kid has a great time at a camp, their parents are going to go to work and tell all their other parents, hey, just try camp. It's a great thing. It doesn't have to be your camp. It could be any camp, and it puts camp in a good light and it's helpful for all. And on the converse of that, if somebody goes and has a bad experience at a camp, that is just so hurtful for camps and for that kid and their friends and all that kind of thing. So it really is up to us to just raise the bar for everybody and try to get everybody to be better. And, I've seen some camp people that give away unbelievable secrets. And I just like, how do you do this? Especially sleepaway camp people, because they really compete with each other. And they're like, yeah, well, I don't have a problem giving it away because first of all, most people aren't going to be able to execute it. And second of all, they're going to do their version of it, and Liberty Lake, which is now entering our 25th summer, people are like, can't believe the amount of unbelievably creative stuff that we do. And I'm just like, it's really a greatest hits of about 1,000 other camps that I've been either visited or heard about at Tri-State or met in the hallway and somebody told me about or heard on a podcast. I think that I'm a great synthesizer. I synthesize stuff well. And I think that for someone like myself, going to Tri-State is the ultimate. And it's funny because my friend Steve Baskin always says, you go to some of these other conferences like National or Wake or whatever, and you feel really good and you're uplifted and it's inspirational and all that kind of thing. And you go to Tri-State and it's just like how to not get sued, because it's very business-minded in some ways. And I think that's a big generalization. And there's no doubt that at Wake we do the kumbaya thing very well. But at Tri-State, there's just so much information and so much stuff that you can learn over those 3 days. It really is something. And we will be doing a day camp podcast roundtable at ACA National and at Tri-State. So I just want to plug the day camp podcast a little bit. the Day Camp podcast, the fruition of the Day Camp podcast, for all you people out there who would be curious about this, is that I was, one of the original like people listening to the Camp Hacker podcast with Travis, and I would listen and I'd be like, there's some good stuff in here, but there's a lot of people talking about not-for-profit camps in Canada, and because at the time it was very angled towards that,
and overnight camps, right?
Overnight, that's what I meant. Overnight too, yeah. And I was like, for a private day camp in New Jersey, I was only sniffing out, stuff.
Right.
I was getting good stuff, but I wanted more. So at the time, my son was battling cancer, and I was like, Travis, when he gets better, I'm going to start a day camp podcast if you help me out. And he was just like, 100%, just call me when you want to do it. And then we did. And I was like, it was a while ago. I mean, I think it's pushing like 7 years ago.
I think we're on season 8 if I'm remembering correctly, which is awesome.
And
Andy, you're just I would agree on all those things about Tri-State. I've left with a full notebook every time that I've went, and later on in my camp career, I was able to start building those connections in a way that you don't often get to do. You have to go year after year to some of those conferences, and I'm always grateful for your stewardship of my experience there. And I will say, as quirky as a place as Atlantic City is, there's always like a place in my heart for walking down that boardwalk in March. It's a little chilly, but the music's playing, and it's like kind of abandoned at that time.
You have to sing that Bruce Springsteen song, the Atlantic City Bruce Springsteen song, in the back of your mind, and
That's right.
It's pretty appropriate.
Well, it's playing on the boardwalk for you. You don't have to even listen to it in your head.
Yeah, and so I was the conference chair. I was the president. I don't remember, one of those things, when we moved to Atlantic City, and we got a lot of gruff at first about it, especially for the New York centric people. But the fact is, it is so cheap to run it down there in Atlantic City compared to running it in New York City, and it allows us to really widen the tent and let all these nonprofit people from across the country, which, by the way, is the vast majority of camps. Right? It allows them to come and get a cheap hotel, and Tri-State is very, very lovely pricing. It's one price for 5 attendees, which is really amazing.
It's very accessible.
Right? Yeah. So I think that it really, really helps with that. And, we do look at other places to move it potentially, but I'm telling you, they're practically paying us to be down there in Atlantic City, So it works on many levels. It is not because I started a camp in South Jersey. I want everybody to know. It's not because of that. It's not why we're there.
Well, Andy, I'm grateful for all that you do to keep telling the good news about Tri-State and the Day Camp Pod. It's such a valuable resource, and we hear it all the time from camp pros. So thanks for all the time you put into it. And let's get back to the game, shall we?
All right, let's do another one.
Okay, we're in the
17.
Okay, we're in the insights category now, and you rolled a 17, you said?
Yes.
Okay. When is a time that you've had to forgive yourself for something?
Oh my God. When you're in charge, whether you're in charge of Tri-State or a section of the American Camp Association or a camp or a family, etc., you make mistakes all the time, right? And all you can do is the best you can do. And you just, if you really are a deep thinker and thinking through the issues and the problem and whatever, and you come up with the best solution that you at that point in your life were the most capable of coming up with, and you ask people, right, some of your trusted confidants and stuff for advice, and then you came up with this, your best go at it, and it didn't work for whatever reason, you have to forgive yourself. The list of my mistakes are long. I mean, if my wife was sitting next to me, she'd be like, well, you bought that $7,000 sunscreen machine at Tri-State. That was the big stupid thing. Yes, that was bad. I've bought a lot of things that haven't worked. I have, and it's a financial hit, when that kind of thing happens. It sucks. I've hired a lot of people that haven't worked out because, my gut told me that they would work out, or maybe I just wanted them to work out. I don't know. I've made a lot of tough decisions, and we opened up in 2020. During the middle of the pandemic. Man, I could be talking about how that was a big mistake, but it turned out that it worked out, right? But who the heck knows? You just make the best decision at the time, and I think it's really important to forgive yourself in those situations. I've been battling warehouses in my town that are now almost completely surrounding my camp. And I looked at the situation, and I knew it was going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight this. And I was like, well, am I just going to sit here and let it happen? Or am I going to look back 10 years from now and be like, you did everything you could do? And even if you're surrounded by warehouses, you'll take solace in that.
Right.
And that's what I did. So I don't want to have regrets, right? I'm getting older now, and you hear about a lot of people when they get older, they have all these regrets. And I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm going to do stuff, and I'm going to take my best shot at it, and I was YOLO before YOLO was a thing, and
We're gonna clip that. That's gonna be a
I'm
clip,
going
and
to
that's
listen.
going
I
out
go
on
to
the
concert.
socials.
I try to enjoy life, and I try to do the best I can do with
Yeah.
whatever it is, and I try to connect with people. I always see the positive in people, and yeah, I'm not going to have any regrets. So I'm sorry I can't give you any like big hearty specifics on that, except the sunscreen machine, but. But yeah, I think it's just really important to forgive yourself and just
Yeah.
make sure you're doing your best, and then you shouldn't be upset with yourself.
Well, and I hear you saying that there's like a little bit of like, I really like what you said about part of not having regrets is to know that you've put in an effort that
Yeah.
you can be proud of, even if it doesn't work well. For Andy, for like a newer camp professional, someone who's newer at being in charge of something, like you said, whether it's a camp, a family, an association, or whatever, what is that like? Can you maybe dissect what the process of forgiving yourself looks like for you? Like how do you internalize it? Do you have a mantra, or do you have something that you go through to be able to move forward?
Well, I think the first part of that you sort of skipped, which I thought you were going to do, but you skipped to the end in a way, was if you really want to do a great job, you should be listening to podcasts like this. You should be going to conferences. You should be meeting people. You should be networking, not just with people in your industry, but with people who have similar things that you do. You should be reading books. You should be watching documentaries. You should be making yourself as smart as possible and getting the most best practices possible so that your business, your organization can be as great as it can be. And you should be constantly learning, right? And I was telling Matt before we started this thing, like I'm a pretty confident person in myself. I am now working with my 26-year-old son who tells me how much I suck all the time and how much I don't know. And you know what? He's right most of the time too. And it's like, you have to be humble and be just an ongoing learner. And when we have conferences, like local ones, and just not that many people show up for it, or when we do these super important webinars and not that many people sign up for it for things, I'm just like, what is more important than this? What would be more important than going and visiting another person's camp or a bunch of people's camps in one day and learning about how they did it and the history behind it and the struggles that they had? And by the way, probably meeting 20 other camp professionals along on the ride at the same time. Like, I just do as much of that stuff as possible. So if you are someone that just is like, okay, I'm going to go to work and do my thing and be in my little silo, okay, and then things happen and you have regrets about it. Yeah, well, I would have a lot of regrets if I just stuck in my silo and I wasn't out there learning best practices and doing all those kind of things. So that's my thinking on that. Yeah, I guess my mantra, Matt, is all you can do is the best you can do.
I like it.
That's what I say.
And to do the best you can do, being a lifelong learner is like important,
Yeah.
is so critical to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, the Go Camp Pro, right, corporation, okay, we're not on the Wall Street, we're not like, we're not just printing money over here, okay? We are doing this because we are nice people and we believe in what we do. And we're trying to elevate everybody. Okay.
Right.
Nobody is doing this for a big paycheck.
Right.
Okay. We are doing this for the love of what we do, plain and simple. And my payment is when I go to these conferences and I have people come up to me and go, "Oh my God, I heard that episode of Michael Brown. Oh my God, you guys were so helpful for me." And I just started being a camp director, and then I listened to every one of your episodes, and it was just like, like that's my payment, and that's what makes me feel good.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Andy. Let's roll again for insights, please.
3.
3.
Yep. My
How
favorite number.
comfortable is it your favorite?
It's my favorite.
How comfortable are you with silence?
I have become more and more comfortable with it as I get older. And I think everybody should. I used to laugh at people that did like meditation and stuff. Like, God, what a waste of time. Right. Now my daughter got me into yoga. I am all about it. I am a musician. I love listening to music. I do. And I am a former professional rock musician. So when there is silence, I hear this hiss, which is not fun. But in conversations, I think silence is important. In when talking to general, when leading talks, silence is important. I now listen to people who feel like they have to keep talking, and I feel bad for them because I know that they're just nervous and they're just trying to fill up the space and they're self-conscious. So like I started by saying, the more you do this, the more confident you get in doing it, the better you get at it, the more you can embrace silence. It's important. The pregnant pause when you talk to people. But I will tell you this, silence in nature is great. Silence in suburbia, and in the city, like the sound of cars and this and that and all that kind of thing, silence means so many different things. I love visiting my friends up in the mountains at their sleepaway camps. So when it's quiet, it really is quiet, because as a day camp person in the suburbs, it's never quiet where I am. There's always the sound of society moving
Right.
around. And that sort of bums me out at times. And it makes me look forward to visit my friends' camps in the summer.
Yeah. Well, why don't we, Andy? Let's give people just 3 seconds.
Inhale, exhale.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Okay, let's roll again.
All right, excellent. Number 4. I can't get out of those single digits. Guys.
It's lucky we're not playing D&D. We'd be in trouble. Andy, what have you learned to take less seriously so you can focus on safety and belonging at your camp?
Weird question, Matt, because to take safety and belonging more seriously, that's serious. You have to take that stuff serious. So I guess that the answer would be the running of the trains on time, the making sure that everything goes right aspect of things, because safety and belonging are so much more macro in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for detailed type A people that run camps, and I think I'm sort of in between type A, type B, but it's easy to have people in your organization who are very detailed and give them a lot of power because they're doing shit that you don't want to do. And frankly, it's like, oh, great, right? And then next thing you know, it's all about the trains running on time, and
Right.
you lose focus on the safety and belonging things. Safety, you know, there's two safeties. There's emotional safety and then there's physical safety. I don't think most camp people are pretty good with the physical safety thing because it's right in their face. Is that safe? No. Fix it, right?
Right.
Is
Right.
that tree going to fall? No, right? But the emotional safety, that's the factors in with belonging stuff. And we had a tragedy at our camp in 2024. And one of the sort of things that came of it was, when you're in a fender bender and then you learn how to, then you drive like really, really super hyper aware for the next couple of years because of what happened. What happened with me is that it happened literally a few weeks after the incident. I began to cherish every single interaction that I had with every single camper and staff member in a heightened awareness state that I still have at this point, like never before. And when you're having those kind of conversations with people and you're really sort of looking into them, um, the idea of like emotional safety and belonging and stuff like that just becomes so prioritized that is why we're here. And the trains running on time is important, but that's a framework. That's really what that is. You have to see that as a framework and not the be all end all. And I think that a lot of people feel like it's a certain kind of person. It's the type A person. And those people are very, very important in your camp organization. But if those people have free range and ultimate authority, it could create a situation where that becomes the most important thing. And running the kids through an assembly line, okay, if you have a lot of bells and whistles and candy that you're throwing at them, yes, they can have a superficially great time. But if you really want to resonate and have a time for these kids that is something that they're going to be remembering for, Justin says, my son says 20, 30-year memories, right? Like if you're trying to create those kind of things, that goes beyond the schedule. That goes beyond, we got to go here, we got to go here, we got to go here, and we have to go here, and make sure that we get there safely, blah, 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 right? It's the higher level thing. It's the connections, and it's the resonating experiences, and the doing things you don't normally do at home, and getting pushed out of your comfort zone, and being supported by one another, and just feeling like a family and a community, truly, not just saying it, but what are the markers that actually, show that? Like your return rate is probably the biggest one. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's where I ended up there.
kids don't come back to camp because of how efficiently everything ran. They came back to camp because of the friendships, the relationships, that they felt safe emotionally and physically to be themselves. And sometimes if that means that you're 10 minutes late to lunch, you're 10 minutes late to lunch. Don't do it every day, but never waste one of those opportunities to build that sense of safety or that sense of belonging.
People won't remember what you say, but they'll remember how they feel, right?
Right.
That's that Maya Angelou thing, which is one of the
Mm-hmm.
greatest quotes of all time.
Yeah. This Go Camp Pro podcast is brought to you by Whereabouts, a new product from our friends at Camptivities. Ever had that heart-stopping moment when a camper accidentally goes home on the bus, but their guardian was supposed to pick them up? Or when you can't confirm everyone's arrived at camp until noon, even though the morning meeting ended hours ago? What about those little moments that slip through the cracks, like staff not knowing it's a camper's birthday or missing a special event reminder? You're not alone. Camps everywhere are saying the same thing. They need a less manual, more connected way to manage the camper experience from drop-off to pickup. Introducing Whereabouts, the only camper management system that updates in real time across 3 interfaces: parents, admin, and staff. The parent app is attendance forward and includes all the features families expect: facial recognition photos, event calendars, news feeds, and more, giving parents peace of mind and your team fewer calls to handle. One system, one set of data, everyone in sync, all the time. From knowing where every camper is, to reducing office chaos, to helping staff feel more connected, Whereabouts help your camp run smarter, not harder. Book a demo today at whereaboutsapp.io. Okay. Andy, we're into our last set of questions now. We are in the beliefs round. So go ahead and roll for that.
Number 7.
Andy, over the years, has your idea of what it means to be a good person changed?
No, I don't think so. I think I've been pretty true to myself and true to my friends, and been able to be relied upon by folks. So no, I
What
don't think
about
so.
like how you perceive others to be good? Has that changed over the years? Like, do you feel like you've had that same kind of set of core values with other people as opposed to yourself?
No, if it was the drugs I did in college or something, Matt, but but ever since, like, besides being an ornery teenager, with a single parent that was able to do anything and really sort of could have gone off the rails but didn't. I really feel like I get accused from my friends all I have been accused from my friends all the time of seeing the positive in people when other people don't, and seeing the positive from situations, seeing the opportunity from situations that are crappy, that kind of thing. I've always had a glass half full perspective, and I refuse to waver from it. And I have a lot of good friends and relatives who are not like that, and they're
Mhm.
great people, but for whatever reason, they think that way. It's interesting. I was a teacher. That was my first. I got my master's in education after my undergraduate music degree, and I started teaching in a school. And one of the reasons I don't teach in a school anymore is because the teacher's room was so toxic. It was these people, in their 40s and 50s who'd been teaching for 20, 30 years, and all they had to say was negative stuff. And I couldn't believe it in an industry, in a career that is about supporting children and making the world a better place, that there was this toxic thing happening there. And to this day, when I interview teachers to work at Liberty Lake, I say, do you eat lunch in the teacher's room? And most of them look at me and go, Lord, no, never do that. Right. I'll be like, all right, good. That's a good marker for you. Yeah. I was so taken aback by that. And it really made me think that, wow, I'm either going to be a school principal or a superintendent, or I'm getting out of this. And I ended up being a camp professional instead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how people function like that.
Yeah.
Life is short, spread sunshine, baby.
I think that's beautiful. Okay. Roll again for beliefs, please.
All right. Number 10.
Number 10. What feels like religion to you?
Nature feels like religion to me. That's a great question. Yeah, being outdoors, being disconnected from technology these days. I was scrolling on Instagram Reels or something like that this morning, and boy, there's some interesting stuff there, and there's all this crazy AI stuff, that's now
Yeah.
integrated into it, and you could just get lost in that world, and so
Absolutely.
many young people are. And man, that is why camp is just so amazingly important right now. And I know that the parents that send their kids to my camps appreciate that. And I think that most parents, have given the opportunity for their kids to go to camp or pushed into it somehow to try it, would appreciate that too. Like I was saying earlier, when I opened my front door here in Morristown, New Jersey, I just hear cars whizzing by. I could hear the New Jersey Turnpike. I could hear that from my camp too. And, just everybody's staring at their phones. And, I joined a gym a month ago, Matt, and all the young males in that gym, they walk around with earbuds the entire time and they don't talk to anybody. They're talking on their earbuds sometimes. I went to the basketball court to play basketball against some of these people, and two of them are talking on their earbuds while they're shooting baskets. And I'm like, first of all, are they remote working? Because that's bullshit. But no, I was just like, that's so pathetic. They won't have conversations. By the way, the
Yeah.
females aren't like that. It's the men. It's a male thing. Um,
Mm.
so to be outside, and by the way, to be outside in New Jersey these days in the summer, you know what that means? That means 100 degrees, okay, weather, humidity, liquid sunshine, storms. They
Yeah.
have tornadoes in New Jersey these days. They didn't have that when I was a
Hmm.
kid. But this is
Right.
what global warming's doing. And that is religion to me. Hearing the birds chirping, right? Seeing that bald eagle fly by. Wow, that is freaking magical. Watching the ripples of the water, all that natural stuff, because we are just in this crazy world right now where
Hmm.
we could just get sucked into so much of this technology is so delicious, and you just want to dig into it. It's just so, it wants you, it's just calling your name,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think we're at an interesting moment in society, and I think that camps are set up really well for it. And I think that we have a great sell for parents that, this is the anti AI. That's what we are. And we're going to teach your kids all the skills they need to be humans and focus on that. Because when you go into a school and the school gives you a laptop and says, here, you know, I don't know how much that's helping. Although I have to tell you, shout out to New Jersey. They just banned phones in New Jersey
Yeah.
starting for next year. So that's a big step.
Yeah. 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 So you can't AI. You can use AI to help you run a summer camp, but you can't AI summer camp. That's for sure. Okay, Andy, we're at our last question. So go ahead and
All
roll
right.
and we'll see what you get.
15.
Okay. Andy, what is the director's duty of candor when something goes wrong?
That is an interesting question in these days, Matt, because I read in 2024 that the word of the year was transparency. So I think we're in an interesting age where people want transparency, but when you're in charge of an organization, candor is also really important. And we have a lot of very nice people working at camp that really want everybody to know as much as possible about things.
Yeah.
And so it sort of goes against like their moral compass. And I say there gave me my moral compass to have candor in some situations. It's a delicate balance. And I think that people need to be coached through it. And you can't just assume that people's candor barometer is the same as yours, especially when you're at the top of the organization, because then you could sort of see where you could sort of anticipate that if these people start thinking this, then that could be a bad thing and it could start going downhill and that kind of thing too. When it comes to being released from a job, right? Whether they're fired or quit or whatever, like that's an area where extreme candor is necessary. And there's no BS about it. Like this is what we're doing. This is what we're saying. This is the company line. End of story. Right. But then, when you find, I had a situation where every, like, I don't know, once a summer, a kid gets a leech on them from the lake, and, everybody's just like, you should send an email home to everybody. You should do this. You should tell, like, why do I want to get people crazy about it? But you see, I've been doing this for a quarter century. I could put things in perspective. I think that a lot of people have trouble putting things in perspective because if it's new to them, they're not seeing necessarily the big picture. So that's why I'm saying people have to get coached through candor. Another place of candor, extreme candor, is any sort of mention or anything that has to do with child abuse or with staff peer-to-peer stuff, accusations and all those kind of things. I mean, they have to be so delicate. There literally has to be a vault involved, and the people that are in that vault have to know that they're vaulted, and that the ramifications of it getting out are extreme and should be extreme to their job, of them even working with you. But again, there are people who work at camp who are just these type B kind of personalities who are all about relationships and gossiping and things like that. They sort of take over sometimes. And it's like, I have information, and my son always says, like, when you have information, that's power. And people feel that power of having that information. And that can really screw up the candor thing. So I go back to the beginning about transparency. Except for a lot of these kind of like safety regarded things and stuff like that, I think being transparent in this day and age is just super important.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't get hung up on candor about a lot of these things that people want to know. Like they want to know how the sausage is made in some ways, why you're dragging us in on this day and why we have to, why do we have this meeting every single Thursday afternoon, at this time? That kind of thing. Again, we talked about it before. Just because you're in charge doesn't mean that you can just go decreeing things and have everybody, agree to it and be cool with it, right? So I think transparency, the balance between transparency and candor has gotten weirder and tougher to navigate as, the staff revolts of 2021 took place and all of a sudden, everybody's empowered, and everybody wants to know more and all that kind of thing. And I'm really lucky because obviously I like talking, and my wife who is an expert in candor and an expert in keeping things close to the vest and all that kind of thing, man, if she wasn't whispering in my ear all the time, I'd be getting myself into a lot more trouble than I do. So you need to be coached sometimes on this kind of thing.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Andy, that is Great. Thank you so much for this time and for sharing all of those things. We end each episode of Intentionally Intentional Leaders with a nomination. So we've had your two Day Camp Pod co-hosts on already. So who is another thoughtful or intentional camp leader or director that you would nominate for us to have next on Intentionally Intentional Leaders?
Do they have to be part of the Go Camp Pro family?
No, they can be whoever.
Oh, well, then I'm gonna go with I mentioned him earlier, Jeff Lykin. I think he's a very, very thoughtful person who camp has meant a lot to him, and he's grown up in it, and from it, and credits the camp experience to a lot of how he developed as a man and a human. And I just feel like he's also, he's around my age, and he's sort of done a couple cycles now and has some good perspective on things. And I love hearing him talk. I find him very insightful. And I do want to do a workshop at a conference with him about how camp directors are too nice, and that's our Achilles heel.
Andy, thank you so much for spending this time with us and for that recommendation and all your insights. We're so grateful to have you part of the Go Camp Pro team and on the Day Camp Pod. Everyone who's listening, you should, if you're not already subscribed to the Day Camp Pod, and we're going to put this in the Day Camp Pod feed as well, so you're listening already, which is great. But please give them a follow, check it out. They did a great episode, like a mailbag episode, where people sent in questions and the team answered them, and I'm sure they're going to do it again. So make sure you get in touch. And Andy, thanks so much.
Oh, I just want to plug one last thing, Matt. So interestingly, Michael Brandwein is also an interesting person, right? Because we all know like the extrovert Michael Brandwein, but no, not too many people know like the introvert version of him, like his real self. On the next one of the upcoming episodes of the Day Camp Pod, it's with Michael, and I actually do turn the tables for the first 10 minutes on him, and I interview him and ask him a whole bunch of these sort of like questions that Matt was asking me. And it is very, very interesting because a lot of people don't know the real Michael, and he's a really, really sweet, amazing guy. So just throwing that out there.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. And thanks for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker Podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.